blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am your host, Laura Arroyo. Before we jump into this episode, I would like to invite you to join this community to hear conversations with other cleft moms and advocates that will help you feel supported along your journey. All I want you to do is click on the Facebook group. We have a page that is linked in the episode notes, so you can speak directly to the guest from this podcast, ask questions, and talk to a community of cleft moms that are eager for answers, but also willing to help. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. If you would like to share your story, please feel free to reach out to me at ourforeversmiles@gmail.com. So this week has been really interesting because I've recorded a number of episodes now, and I've just been like so prepared for this podcast, and I've just been so excited about it. It's a ton of work to pull this off, and I still have a full-time job, and Our Forever Smiles has become like my second full-time job. And so it's physically and mentally challenging, but honestly, the one thing that I didn't really expect is the emotional toll that it was going to have on me. And so lately I've just been in my feels a little bit, but I am okay. And honestly, I never want to feel like numb to this. I never want to get to a point while I'm running this podcast that I don't feel a deep connection to our guests, and I don't have those like chills that I regularly get every single time I record. It's been such an honor to hear all of your stories, and it's just been an honor to be a vessel and to provide you all with the candid truth and information. It is the information that we all need or needed in this journey. So I want to just start off by saying thank you all today. And also today we have a guest, and I also want to thank her because I sent out my usual rounds of guest requests literally last night. And usually how this goes is people think that I'm like spam, or they have to consult with their partner or husband, or they have to find the right time, etc., etc. And I understand all those things. I feel like being on a podcast can also be like nerve-wracking. I'm also a complete stranger, so I know that people can be like skeptical of this sort of thing. But anyway, I messaged Christina, and Christina messaged me right away, and she scheduled within, 30 minutes of me sending out my invitation. It was like record-breaking when I got the invite, the way that I process these or schedule the interviews and these podcast episodes. I was like, oh, tomorrow. Okay, I'll be there. So just thank you so much for making that easy for me. Christina is a proud mother of two wonderful girls, Audrey and Mackenzie, and has been a proud Smile Train CCAC advisory board member for 3 years. And this is the first year of her being the team lead. So congratulations. I just wanted to take it back to when you found out Mackenzie was going to be a child with a cleft, and how was your reaction to that when you found out?
Yeah, Mackenzie
So we were being seen by maternal fetal medicine. So I had more ultrasounds than I think normal, more testing than normal. And even with all the ultrasounds and tests, Mackenzie's cleft was not seen until after she was born. I always joked that it was always because she had her hands and her feet near her face. Actually, my husband today, this morning, was showing me a picture of the ultrasound. It came up in a Facebook uh, memory, and her hand was in her by her face, and her foot was in her mouth. And going back now, I almost see a line where it possibly could have not seeing it on the ultrasounds, and then just having your child born, and then there's silence. There's whispers of nurses talking to each other, and you can almost faintly hear what they're saying, but not really. And your mind just starts to race, and you just want to know, is my baby okay? Are they healthy? And Greg and I are looking at each other, and we're wondering, and then they give you this news that your child was born with a cleft. And at the time, I knew nothing about a cleft. I had zero information of what a cleft was. So ultimately, I felt defeated.
Yeah. Did they know? Did they even suspect this at all, or did they just
Not
chalk
at
it up
all.
to like just her hands are in her face, and every time she's here, we can't get a picture of it, and so
Oh,
we're
she was
just assuming. We're
stubborn.
assuming my girl is also stubborn, and she sucks her thumb, and you could see that as well in when she was in the womb. She always had her hands up in her face and her thumb near her mouth and stuff, and so when she came out and she had a cleft palate, we were totally shocked, and it was a complete surprise to us. But it's so interesting that she still sucks her thumb like now, even after palate repair. But it's one of those things. I don't know, not to get off a subject or anything, but children that are born with a cleft palate, they aren't able to form suction, and so they don't really use pacifiers. Some people find some that work for them, but they don't really use pacifiers, and so Giselle sucks her thumb. And back then, being the mom that I am, I felt bad that she was never able to use a passy, and so I just allowed her to suck her thumb, and now she still sucks her thumb. So
Oh, my goodness.
my mom was like, you should probably like wean her. And I'm thinking, like, it's the only thing she has, Mom. Don't take that from her.
It's self-soothing. It's okay. Mackenzie sucked her thumb up until she sucked her thumb, and she used the passy, her surgery, at 5 months old. And then after that, she weaned herself off.
Yeah. What do you So was Mackenzie palate affected?
No, she was not palate affected. It was just a unilateral cleft lip.
Gotcha. Okay, because then I was gonna ask what passy she used, because so many people have questions about pacifiers to use for their child, their cleft affected child. After finding out, so were you able to did you see it as soon as she came out, or was she moved away and they just figured this out while she was doing her newborn screening and stuff?
So yeah, they took her right away. I didn't actually get to see her right away. So they did her little assessment in the heating bed, and that's where they found it. I mean, I knew nothing until the nurse told me.
Wow. Yeah. Did you have any knowledge of what this entailed or the journey that you were about to go on?
Not a clue. I knew nothing about cleft. I had never heard of a cleft before. So I ultimately felt, defeated. I felt sad. I felt devastated. What did I do? All those mom worries came to my head. What did I do wrong? you know, just pure sadness.
Mm.
It was a lot of sadness and
Yeah.
definitely a lot of confusion.
It's so interesting. I was also blindsided by my daughter's cleft palate. And so I feel like we have a bit of a unique experience, right? Because I feel like I've talked to some moms about this, like what's worse, right? Like, which one is like harder? Is it harder for you to have found out during your anatomy scan, 20 weeks, having so much more time to go and just like thinking about that while you're pregnant, or I guess being ill prepared or not prepared by being surprised at birth? And so just in thinking about that, what are your thoughts on that? I know that we have the same experience of just learning about it when they were born. And I go back and forth about whether I would have rather known earlier on. I think I would have been more prepared, but I know I would have been more prepared. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm the type of person where I research everything. So had I known about it at the 20-week scan, I think I would have felt more prepared and a little less devastated.
Mm,
Uh, I just, I don't know. I don't know if I would have felt any different had I known. I would have still felt like I had done something wrong regardless.
yeah.
Um, I think whether we find out or not, our journeys still go along the same route. It's still going to be a unique story and a unique journey.
Yeah. I had the feeling of, wow, I was in so much shock that I feel like everything that I did from there, I operated from a place of shock. And I've had conversations with several clef moms, thankfully to this podcast. And I've I had a conversation with Morgan Kane. That's one of the episodes that sticks in my mind. And she says, I wish I could go back and hug myself because all of the things that you're worried about or concerned about are so heightened during that time. And there's no way that you can like really make, of course, you can make decisions and stuff, but I wish that I was in a different like mindset or a different like frame frame of mind, because I think that everything that I did was a little bit like impulsive and reactionary. Not that I did anything wrong. I feel like my daughter got the best care that she deserved, but I remember like thinking back on it, how anxious I was and how just like all over the place that I was, like, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
yeah, from learning about Mackenzie's cleft, how did you start to prepare after that initial shock? What did you do next?
So thankfully, the hospital that I had her at was very quick and very attentive to Mackenzie's needs. And I would say within the next like 24 to 48 hours, I had a whole cleft team coming. She, Mackenzie also had some issues with glucose to prick her heel like 9 times within a 24-hour span. That's like a whole other thing. So they were already on top of her, but they were like
Yeah.
extra on top of her. Yeah, like within 24 to 48 hours, we had seen um the surgeon that they had recommended for us, and he is amazing up to this day. And she'll see her surgeon again for another possible revision for a keloid scar that she has. Her ENT came, and speech and swallow was there to help with the feeding aspect. Along with that came some other journeys of finding out she had some lactose issues. Again, a whole separate. She had a lot going on. She was a child with a lot going on, but that definitely put my mind at so much more of an ease it was still a lot of confusion and a lot of words at once and a lot of things that like they give you all this information at once and you're trying to process it so quickly. And then it's like, all right, this is happening. And we're already talking about next steps and NAMs and taping and, the first appointment. And you have to think of all these things now. And just, it's a lot. And like you said, it's overwhelming. It's anxious. It's overwhelming. It's scary. And it's just the beginning of a whole slew of things to come. Because what people don't understand with cleft, whether it's cleft lip or cleft palate, it's not just one surgery to fix what's wrong. There is so much more behind it. No one realizes that there's issues and speech issues and breathing issues. I can go on. There's all these things behind it that entail with having a cleft lip or palate. So your mind just is bogged with all this information coming.
Yeah. That was the one thing I also failed to realize as well. It's you're not only having to deal with, right, like the obvious lip or palate repair, it's also having to make these decisions about all of the other things that come along with it. Just as you mentioned, it's okay, we're also going to put tubes in her ears, and we're also going to have you see a pediatric dentist, and we're also going to have you see a feeding therapist, and later on down the line there's speech. And so it's like having to make all of these decisions or just to think about these things is challenging. It's the emotional labor that takes a toll that people don't quite, I assume that people don't really quite know what all of that entails or really understand what all of that entails until they've been on this journey. And Mackenzie is 4 now, and so she's been through this, like her initial surgeries. How many surgeries has she had so far?
She has had 1 lip revision and 1 tongue tie release. And in June, we're going to talk about a revision of her lip. She had a keloid scar, which is just like it's a bump with extra tissue. What the surgeon wants to do is just go in and narrow down that scar because the lip formation looks great. It's just that little bump. And we talked about it last year and we said, okay, we're going to wait a year and we're going to just massage her lip and see if that kind of helps break down that tissue. And I even did some vitamin E oil for the scarring. He said, it looks good, but let's see down the line. And that might be another possible surgery this summer or maybe towards the end of the year. But she has had other specialty, like you had mentioned, like pediatric dentist. I completely forgot audiology, how many hearing tests she's had.
Yeah. How old was she when she had her first surgery?
She was 5 months old.
Oh, wow.
Did
you experience? Yeah, that's exactly going to ask you. Did you have any, I guess, grief after her correcting her smile? I've heard some mothers describe this feeling of sadness about grieving that first wide smile. And, once it's like you're so eager for repair. And then when the day gets there, you're like, I'm not ready.
So up until the surgery, I was nervous for it. The day of the surgery, I handed her off to the surgeon taking her in, and I got down to the main floor and I just bawled my eyes out. I cried the whole day. And then we actually ended up staying overnight which was a good relief. I highly recommend to anyone, if they give you the option to stay overnight, take it. But no, looking now, looking at her pictures, I grieve that. I'm so glad that we fixed it because, like, I don't know. I'm glad that I fixed it because I didn't want that stigma following her everywhere and the questions. I didn't want her to have to go through life with additional issues medically, but also as she grows and goes through school and kids and bullying. But now that I look at her pictures in my memory board, like, I just miss that smile so much. I look at it and I'm like, man, that was her first smile and it was such a beautiful smile. And I do miss it sometimes. Of them. It's who they are.
Yeah, I've heard people even say, I didn't recognize my child. I didn't recognize my child. And they're like, it's nobody prepares you for that part of it. That you walk around that corner to go see them once they're out of surgery, and it's, who is this the right baby?
It did, but it did
so
though.
different.
It was weird. You're looking at your child and this isn't my child because she had this nice little cute gap, that was unique to her, and now it's not there, and it's okay. This is my child now.
Yeah. And so you mentioned staying like that additional day if you're able to. So with palate repair, so I'm in the United States and I'm in North Carolina. And so at the hospital, they allowed us to stay. We have to stay one night. And then they basically relieve us in the morning as long as Giselle was feeding okay and we were able to manage her pain okay, they released us in the morning. And I've heard varying things, right? That sometimes I've heard people stay 2 or 3 days, and I've heard people say that they've done like completely outpatient. I've heard the outpatient one more with like lip repair, where they do the repair and then, they stay for a few hours and then they're clear to go later that night as long as everything is fine. Um, but as you said, like, I can't imagine. My daughter was miserable after palate repair. And I know I'm so glad that we were there, as you said, because I had that extra support and someone that could step in as needed. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I was told it was supposed to be more of an outpatient. The surgery was to be done. We would wait for her to wake up and um, feed and whatever requirements that they needed for her to go home. And then one of the nurses came in and had asked us if we were staying a night, and I froze a little bit. I was like, I was not given that option. At first, I was told this was an outpatient. So I was fully expecting to go home and freak out about how am I going to take care of this 5-month-old in a lot of pain? What am I going to do? And yeah, that sense of relief that I got when she gave me that option, there was no question I was taking that.
Yeah.
I still say it was the best decision I made because overnight they just have a better eye and watch on the pain level. And, again, just feeling that overwhelmed and anxious post surgery, giving you a little bit of comfort, knowing that you have someone there to take her if you need a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? How did you all prepare for surgery? What do you think that people should do mentally and also just like practically to prepare for surgery? What are things that like people should bring or just be thoughtful of when they're getting ready for lip repair?
I brought with her just like a favorite blankie And then we had done there's a nonprofit called Cuddle for a Cleft. And you give them your child's information, when their surgery date is, and someone can go onto their page and sponsor a care package for them. And it comes with a little onesie and a little bear or toy and like a stuffy and a book about cleft. So I brought her favorite blanket. I brought the bear that we got. At that point, I didn't bring a passy because I was, I was far off from thinking that she would need it afterwards. I think mentally, I stayed off Google. And because your first instinct is you want to know everything about the surgery and how long and outcome and all the things that could happen. So I stayed off Google. I prayed quite a bit of praying. I'm not a very spiritual person, but I prayed a little. And I had my husband and we just talked and talked.
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier about the speech journey that Kenzie has had to go through. And I want to talk about that a little bit more because I feel like we haven't had a guest on the podcast that has been able to speak to the impact that a cleft may have on speech. And so I guess when was the first time that Mackenzie was evaluated for speech?
I love this. So this is almost my favorite topic to talk about is speech. Mackenzie went through birth to 3. I did birth to 3 with my oldest daughter who wasn't cleft affected, but also had some speech issues. So I knew that I wanted to bring in birth to 3. And we started around like 5-6 months, but it was also COVID. So a lot of our sessions were video sessions, were Zoom sessions. But around the time that she should have started talking a little more, we were still getting more jargon than actual words. She was saying some words, some basic words, mama, dada, but she wasn't saying enough. I don't like to use enough. She wasn't at the level that for her age she should have been. She should have had some more phonetic work. And so every month we were doing the ASQ, and which is a test that kind of just sees where your child is a standard range of other children. It's commonly used a lot in elementary and early education. But it goes up to a wide range age.
Oh, wow.
And still was using more jargon. 2, she was still using more jargon. By 3, when preschool started around, and we were going from that transition from birth to 3 to preschool, we're like, okay, something is not right. Let's look into speech. And my oldest had been already going to an outside speech at a local college that has a communication disorder department. So she had started there for a little while, but COVID caused some issues within that program. So I had actually switched both of them to a different program.
What is birth to 3?
They're a program that comes in and they work with your child through a play structure, but they're also gauging at the same time their gross motor, their fine motor skills that are age appropriate to where they, to the age. It's great because your child is doing developmental play. Like they are putting beads on a string, or they are just basic using color, how they hold a crayon. And they're gauging your child's development and what's age appropriate for them. And they're having fun.
So it's not just geared towards speech, but it does have a component of speech. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah. So they will give you based on, so every month we would do the ASQ, the age, it's called Ages and Stages questionnaire. And they'll do it, and they'll have the parent do it and or guardian do it. And based on how that comes out, they can recommend whether your child needs like another service like OT, speech. That's actually how we found out both my girls needed speech.
Yeah, I'm interested in learning. Just for the audience here, I just Googled birth to 3 and right here on my computer, and actually the Children's Development Services came up with their program. So I'm sure that if you all Google that, you may be able to pull up some resources as it relates to birth to 3 as well, and the ASQ. That's really, really good to know. And so after she went through that program and she had her initial testing done, I guess what happened after that, or how did they find out that she had additional needs, and how was she placed into speech therapy?
Based on what I had seen through birth to 3 and over the summer, just knowing that both girls needed to find a new place to go for speech, we had found a really great place, and they did an initial evaluation. It was about an hour long, and that they determined what speech was something that they could use. And also knowing that Mackenzie had a cleft, actually, I believe with a cleft lip and palate. I want to say, I'm not positive, with palate as well. I think they automatically qualify for speech because of the cleft affects their mouths.
Yeah.
If that's the easiest term to put it at. But so we did that hour-long speech with the outside service that they're currently still at. And but for school, because Mackenzie had such a hard time with using her words and just using more jargon than anything, I had taught her some basic sign words to kind of get her by. It caused some behavioral issues. She was trying so hard to tell us all these things, and because no one could understand, she would get frustrated, and it caused outbursts and tantrums and head banging and just a lot of frustration on her end. And then on our end, because you see your child so overly upset that they're trying to tell you something and you don't understand. You don't get it. You can't understand what they're saying.
Around what age did the frustration start?
Around 2-3 years old, when she was ready to put those good formed sentences together, but it wasn't really coming together. So on top of speech, we were also doing occupational therapy to help her find those words and figure out those emotions, and how her speech and OT were working together to build a structure for her that when she was in school, she wasn't outbursting in tantrums, because I was getting almost daily reports back from her school that she was having a rough day because she wasn't understanding, or they weren't understanding what she was trying to say. And it was just causing so much distress on her behalf and then on their behalf, because they have all the students that they have to focus on. And Mackenzie's having a hard time because she's just not getting the words that she needs out. So once she started picking up those words and we got a grasp of to better help her, we use vision boards now with words that are generally used in stop, no, I want, I need, those type of things. Just getting her to stop and breathe and try again. The behavior part has now stopped. Like, we've gotten the behavior part under control. It's now just a continued process. Once we had that tongue tie release, her words just started to zoom out. The other day, actually, it was last night, husband came home and she had pointed at him and said, Daddy did something. And then she looks at him and goes, that was so rude. And I could not, I'm like, just the word like the words that come out of this child now. She is the sass, the personality, and it changes once all these things come together. It almost seems like their personality just comes out so much more.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
you
I can
see a
imagine,
whole
right?
new child.
Yeah, like they probably feel like they can finally let loose or something. But yeah, I wanted to ask or go back to, you mentioned that she had a lot of hearing tests along with the tongue tie that she had. Did they mention anything about her hearing that may have been impacting her speech?
So we had done auditory screenings for about 2, 3 years. I know we haven't done one in at least the last 6 months. And every time that she had an auditory screening, she was almost at that cusp of there was some issue, but she was okay, but they weren't sure if it was just that she was exhausted because they had put headphones on her and she needed to either look at the direction of where the sound was coming as she was younger. It was just more them looking for, can she hear which direction it's coming from, to where she was more like 2, 3 years old. Let's raise her hand on which ear you can hear out of the sound coming out of. And she was almost like at a borderline issue, but it was never a complete problem. But we always did wonder if part of the speech issue was that she wasn't hearing us as well as she should have been.
Yeah. What do you think I know you've listed quite a few just as you're sharing Mackenzie's journey through speech, but what are like 3 things that you think you did that improved her speech dramatically that other moms can also do?
I think just being very persistent with just basic terms, mama. More, all done. I love that we did this sign language. I think sign language was a great start. I think just going everywhere and, oh, here's a tree. Just pointing out, persistent on expanding their vocabulary, always giving new words, finding new words, and just working on it with them.
Yeah. I've heard that narrating everything to them is like really helpful. I know for Giselle specifically, I have a strong feeling that she's going to be in speech. And the reason being is because she's just had a lot of ear infections. Our children that have clefts, it's just a part of their journey, really. But she's had a lot of ear infections. She has a lot of fluid in her ears. And so I just kind of sense that she may be missing sounds that she could be like grasping at this point. She's 18 months. And while she knows words, I feel like the way that I look at things is, can someone outside of her family understand her? And I don't think that they would. I know what she's saying because I know her.
Right.
But there's so many things that she says that she needs assistance with. But I do try to teach her new words, and not only is it just like the cutest thing that she can sign all these words, but it is really helpful in understanding what she wants, because just the basics of like milk, and as you mentioned, all done. She even says sorry. And that's probably the funniest one because she never actually, she actually says all of her signs. So if she'll sign all done and she'll say all done while she's signing. Sorry is the only one where she will not verbalize, which I don't know if that's personality or
I'm telling you, Mom, sorry,
I'll
but
sign. Yeah, I'll sign it, but I refuse to say it.
I feel like there's almost a stigma with speech too that comes around speech. Like, oh, if I put my child in speech, then I did something wrong. And not, there's no shame in needing the extra support, especially when you're going through a journey like ours. There's
Yeah.
no shame in getting that extra help. I didn't even realize that even the basic things like mouth movement and using a straw, I found out just recently. We already knew, but the school caught up to it as well. Mackenzie prefers her right side. So Mackenzie's surgery was on her left side. When she speaks or when she uses a straw, her mouth muscle is more predominant on the right side. She uses her right side more. And it's almost funny the way that when she speaks, like her face kind of squints to the right, like her mouth just, it's all movement on the right. Like, and it just looks cute. But yeah, so now we have to work with her on gaining that muscle strength in the left, and just using a basic straw and having her keep it in the middle is a task for her. That like speech is great because it's not just speech. Speech also can work on feeding therapy. It's such a broad dynamic of things that you don't think about because not even with Palate, I can only imagine feeding to be such a challenge. And I know with Mackenzie that we had quite a hard time with feeding for many various reasons, but speech is there to also help you with nutrition and feeding.
Yeah. I so I'm a writer. That is, what I do I'm an instructional designer and I'm a technical writer, and communication is like a really big thing. It's been something that has been a part of my world for as long as I can remember. And effective communication is one of those things that I feel like you don't even, have to be the brightest person in the room, but if you can effectively communicate, then you will at least appear to be the smartest in the room. And of course there are other benefits to that, socially, and then of course, just like mentally and emotionally, just being able to communicate. That's something that is a wonderful skill that all adults should have. And I think that is really critical and important. And I hate that, just as you said, that people feel like there is some stigma behind speech or putting your child into speech therapy, because I think that it is such a phenomenal thing. There are motivational speakers that go through speech coaching, or they go through things or programs that help them with enunciation, right? So that when they're on stage, they can pronounce words a certain way and deliver a message a certain way. And so it's just so interesting that when it comes to this or your child, that it almost seems like you've done something wrong, or there's a stigma that you've done something wrong, when this is done widely, like across generations, right? Like it's something that people do to practice and to get better at their speech and to become a more effective communicator. And so I'm really big into speech. I've always been very interested in it. And I honestly feel like even if Giselle was not born with a cleft, I would still have been interested in some sort of, not necessarily speech therapy, but just like a communication type of program for her, just because I really think that it is valuable. It's a valuable skill to have. It's just interesting that you said that, because I've always felt the same way, that people feel like some shame around it, but I've always been on the side of like that's one of the greatest skills that you can have.
It is. It really is. There is, such wealth in having that resource. You don't understand until you use it, until it's given to you, that you can gain so much more vocabulary and just so much more knowledge just by using a simple resource like that.
Yeah, for sure. And so have they said anything about how long she'll have to be in speech, or what her speech journey will look like now moving forward?
So as of recently, we actually just had a PPT for Mackenzie, a parent, almost essentially a parent teacher conference for anyone that doesn't know. And we reviewed, Mackenzie and where Mackenzie's at emotionally. I'm going back to what you said socially. Some of Mackenzie's speech issues caused social problems. She wasn't communicating with her friends. She wasn't playing with her peers because she wasn't able to tell them, like, I don't want to play with you anymore. I'm all done. But as of recently, because of speech, she's gained those words and she's using them more often. And toileting, no one even thinks about toileting. We didn't think that we were anywhere near Mackenzie being ready for kindergarten next year because she wasn't telling anybody when she had to go to the bathroom. And she was still in pull-ups up until maybe a month or so ago. And we were getting nervous. We're like, all right, June is coming and she's still in pull-ups and we really got to get on this and we got to get her to start using her words. And then we have the tongue tie release, and once she started gaining those regular school words, it just all came together. And now she's thriving. Her last PPT, Mackenzie's thriving. She's using her words more. She is now continually going to the bathroom with no assistance. She can do it on her own. She'll let the teacher know, I have to go potty. And she's very proud of it now. I went potty. She'll come out of the bathroom. I'm potty trained. At home, she'll come out of the bathroom. Mommy, I'm potty trained. I'm like, yes, Mackenzie. Yes, you are.
You say we all are.
You're doing a great job, Mackenzie. You're doing great.
But
But
that is the sweetest thing ever. My
it's
goodness.
great. And, and we're working on, actually today she had outside speech today. I work at the girls' school. I'm privileged enough that I work at the girls' school. So I can talk to her school speech teacher as I need, but I wasn't able to see her today. Outside speech said they're working on just the L words, using L in different forms, whether it's in first and in the front, in the middle, although it's not quite there, but it's there. It's better than it was even just a few weeks ago. Are just progressing slowly. Progress. That's the word, is progress. And so now we're seeing that she might actually do well in kindergarten. And as far as speech, she's going to continue to get speech for the foreseeable future. I know that we're having a transition meeting in May again to talk about Mackenzie and her needs as it comes to kindergarten. And she gets 2 half-hour sessions. One, she gets taken out to the speech pathologist room, and she's getting also a half-hour in classroom, more individualized speech. So I'm hoping continues into kindergarten because that's what's just keeping her moving. So as long as it's keeping her moving, I'm going to keep advocating for whatever she needs fit.
Yeah. I love that. What do you think has been the hardest part of the cleft journey?
I think one of the hardest things is just using my voice more to get her needs. you really, once you start that journey of schooling, it becomes a whole other ball game. Now you have a child with needs, and you have to start really just asking those questions and being their voice, and just learning how to stick up for what's right for them, knowing that these children have their own rights.
I think that I don't know, I've had when I was in my 20s, I felt a little like feistier. And then now I don't know, before Giselle, I just okay, whatever, I'm like more go with the flow. I tone down. And then now that I have Giselle, I'm getting a little bit more of my feistiness back. To
Yeah.
where I'm like challenging everyone. But it's not, I show up for her in a different way than I show up for myself. And I'm okay with that. Like for me, it's okay. If something's not going right for me, like it's not gonna be too bad for anyone. But when it comes to Giselle, I am literally there, all voice, and really just making sure that she gets everything that she needs. So that when I go to bed at night, I'm not thinking I should have done something different for her or I could have done more. I never ever want to feel that feeling. And so that's something that I've really recognized in myself, that I have to advocate for her because she only has me and her dad, of course. But yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, we're their biggest advocates, we're their biggest voices. And like I said, I work at Mackenzie's school, so they see me daily, and I'm not like, I'm like you. I was very toned down. I hardly even stuck up for myself. I was like you, I just go with the flow. And
Yeah.
when it came to Mackenzie, I'm always on top of them, and we use an app to communicate between the teachers and the parents, and I'm always on them with communicating, has she had a good day? Like, I'll even, if I see them, like, I'll just, thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, and they know what I'm asking them. And I'm not shy now to be almost not confrontational, but like in their face, like, all right, did you see her today? Did she have a good day? How was her day? Is there something that I could do? Do we need to sit down? Do we need to talk about this? Not so much now. When she was having more of the trouble, especially last year, it was, I was more on top of them. Now that she's advocating a little more for herself, I've dialed back a little bit with that. But I mean,
Yeah.
I still, on the occasion, I'm always on top of, like, all right, when is she having a PPT? Um, I'll see her speech therapist, because I'm not always sure what days she gets taken out or seen, because when we have New England weather and the days are mixed up and we have a day off or a delay, it kind of messes up their schedule. So, did you see her today? What happened? I'm very quick to ask those questions now.
Yeah. And that's necessary. So, just in closing, what is the best advice that you've received as a mother of a child that was born with a cleft?
The best advice that I have gotten is to continually ask questions. Ask your ENT, your whole cleft team, teachers, ask your community. There is a whole wide community out there, organizations, there are Facebook groups for those that are cleft affected, and parents that have children that are cleft affected. There are so many different resources out there. And if you don't know something, ask, because you are in such a unique group, but you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone.
For sure. For sure. I totally agree with that. There was so many questions that I had, and I also had to keep a notepad. I use my phone for a lot of things, but I would keep notes so I could remember the questions that I had for my next visit or things that came up. that I was thinking about on the drive home, or just how things come up in the shower. That's when we think of everything. And so, yeah, I kept a long list of questions to ask. So that's something that is super valuable and really important to do. But yeah, I want to thank you, Christina, for sharing Mackenzie's journey here, and especially just speaking to the speech component, because I feel like that's a missed effect that a cleft can have on a child. Did I word that right? I can't.
Yeah. It's a myth. No,
Yeah.
I get it. Something that people often don't associate with cleft is how much speech a child will need. It is a missed
Yeah.
component to your
Yeah.
cleft journey.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I want to thank you, and just thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you have enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.